Excellent. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed that little video we put together. Thank you, Jenny, for that great little intro reminding us back of the last conference we had where we could meet face to face here in Singapore. So it's great to be here and connect with you on this slightly different platform now as an e-conference. And we've got a great little agenda planned for you this morning. So first and foremost, we'll kick into some greetings around for those of you that have joined us from around Southeast Asia. Thank you very much. We've got teams from Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, as well as Indonesia. So welcome to everybody. It's really great that you could join us today. What can you expect from this session? It's pretty important. We're showing you who we are, some updates, and we hope this sparks you into thinking out the box slightly and also brings that motivation ready for 2021 as the year end quickly approaches. So we do have a few little guidelines for the e-conference, and there might be some people that are still joining us, but hopefully they can fix their technical difficulties. So all participants will be muted. You'll be able to hear us, but effectively, if you have any questions, you can put them into the chat feature, type out the question and send it through. We'll be answering and stopping after each presentation for a quick question and answer session. If we can't get to your questions during the time limit, we'll respond by email directly or give you a phone call and discuss further. If you don't want to put something on the chat, please go ahead and send us a message directly. Please refrain from any personal questions or non-subject related questions during the event. We'll send out some slides afterwards that you can use for your reference. And then effectively, the session will be recorded and we'll be posting that to some of our social media handles. So that'll be great for you to reference back or share it with your customers and build that awareness. All right, so again, thank you for all of you attending. This morning we have a great presentation from Mr. Koon Goh. He joins us from ANZ Bank here in Singapore. He's been with us, with ANZ for the past 14 years and effectively is a wealth of knowledge and is ready to share with us. So thank you, Mr. Goh. We look forward to your presentation and hopefully some great market insights into the current situation around Southeast Asia.
Yeah, thank you very much, Donald. Good morning, everybody. Just give me a second while I share my slides. So for the next 20 or so minutes, I'm just going to go through how I see the economic outlook for the region. I'm glad I'm giving this presentation right now in early December and not, like 6 months ago, because the outlook definitely is looking a lot brighter for 2021 compared to even half a year ago. I guess just to quickly recap, 2020 has been, in many respects, a very unprecedented year. It's been a very, very challenging year, no doubt. COVID-19, first and foremost, is a health crisis. And it's a health crisis that morphed into the economic crisis that all of us have been impacted by, largely because of the government response to contain the outbreak. It's important to recognize that because it's really what governments were forced to do that created the economic damage and the struggles that businesses and households are facing. Travel bans, lockdowns, of course, everyone was very cautious when the virus first started to spread. And it was really these actions that led to the unprecedented slump in economic activity all around the world. The IMF called it the Great Lockdown. And when businesses were forced to shut and households were forced to stay at home, obviously economic activity ground to a halt. Now at this stage, what we are going through right now is very different from 10 years ago. This is not a financial crisis. Thankfully, we are not facing, and I don't expect us to face, a financial crisis because of the quick support that policymakers all around the world undertook to support the global economy. There were a lot of lessons that were learned during the global financial crisis. And I'm very glad that they went through that experience 10 years ago, because the central banks were very quick to act over the course of the early stages of the pandemic, particularly in March. I think if you can recall back then, there were real concerns about the financial markets, when equities, everything was just getting liquidated. And there were genuine concerns about dollar shortages emerging, particularly in Asia. And at that particular point, it looked like we might have been heading towards a financial crisis, something akin to what was experienced in the 1990s. But thankfully, policymakers took decisive action. The Fed injected unlimited liquidity into the system. They provided basically dollars to whoever that needed them. And that actually avoided a financial crisis. So banks are actually now flush with cash. We don't have to worry about a credit crunch situation. Now, there is still something that we need to be aware of, particularly in the next 3 to 6 months until the vaccine gets distributed. And we still have a risk that we could still see a solvency crisis emerging in the coming weeks and months. Now, a solvency crisis is very different from a financial crisis. A solvency crisis simply means that a lot of businesses at this point in time are being propped up by fiscal support. Now, the fiscal support, they are not unlimited. And in fact, over the coming months, in many countries, some of these fiscal support will expire. And if the economic recovery is not strong enough by then, a lot of businesses might find themselves actually in a solvency crisis where they simply cannot trade their way out and they're forced to file for bankruptcy. And if there is enough of that spiraling effect, then obviously that's going to start to feed through into a renewed downturn. So I think that's probably, to me, one of the key risks over the coming months that we've managed to more or less in Asia anyway contain the pandemic. We've avoided the financial crisis. There's plenty of cash in the financial system, so we don't have to worry about that. But if companies simply cannot trade their way out, of course banks are not going to continue to extend credit to companies that they think will not pay them back. So that's, to me, I think the key near-term risk and something we need to be cognizant of. Now, in terms of the virus situation, globally, unfortunately, we're still far from being contained. We have been seeing record numbers of daily cases, unfortunately, record numbers of daily deaths. And what has been the key driver of the recent resurgence has been in the United States. Europe also had their big outbreak, but thankfully it looks like Europe is starting to see their case numbers decline as countries like France, Germany, and UK took steps to impose fresh lockdowns. Now in Asia, the situation is quite mixed, but generally Asia has done a much better job compared to other regions in terms of containing the pandemic or bringing it under control. And that's actually vitally important in terms of how we think about the pace of economic recovery in 2021. What we know for sure is that if you don't bring the pandemic under control, there's no way activity can get back to any semblance of normality, because you'll be forced into restrictions, which will hamper growth. Consumers, businesses will be very cautious, and it's just nearly impossible to get a decent economic recovery going. So in Asia, we are seeing some positive signs, but also there are some concerning signs that are emerging in some countries. India and Indonesia and Philippines are the three countries that initially were the worst hit. But thankfully in India and the Philippines, as you can see from the charts here on the right, their cases are starting to go down. So what seemed very alarming back in August and September is now starting to head in the right direction. And that's very positive for those countries. That suggests that the rebound definitely can start to pick up pace. Unfortunately, you have other countries in this region, and Indonesia and Malaysia are two in particular, that continue to face record high numbers. Malaysia numbers really started to spring up from early October as a result of the local election they held, and that was the ground zero of the renewed resurgence that you're seeing now. In Indonesia, they avoided nationwide lockdowns. They did impose restrictions in around Jakarta, but they avoided nationwide lockdowns, and it's very clear that they haven't been successful in containing it the first time around, and now we're seeing a renewed resurgence. Now, even countries that have been very successful in containing the virus early on are now experiencing second or even third waves, and in Hong Kong now they're calling it the fourth waves. And you can see from the chart here, Korea, Hong Kong now has suddenly seen a spike up out of nowhere, just in the past couple of weeks. And Taiwan as well, which has been, if you like, the poster child very early on, have suddenly seen a rise in cases. So what this also tells you is that no matter how competent, no matter how good the government has been in containing the virus early on, this virus is one where you're only as good as your weakest link, and it does not take much to see a resurgence. All it takes is a few individuals to not behave appropriately, and you can cause a spread like what we've seen now. So the key lesson from this is simply this virus on its own is not going to go away. It's not like the 1918 Spanish flu epidemic where, after a couple of years, it suddenly just magically disappeared. This particular virus is not going to go away on its own. And no matter how well any government is successful in containing it within their country, they can only hold it for so long, and you can see resurgence just happen quite easily. And how well you manage it also has an important bearing on economic activity. So this chart here shows the Google mobility trends. Thanks to modern technology and the availability and popularity of smartphones and Google apps, Google is able to track and monitor movements of people using their products. And this is probably the best real-time indicator we have of economic activity. And when I split up the average mobility movements of different countries, what becomes very clear is that countries that were successful in managing the virus early, they still suffered a decline in activity, but not as much, not as sharp as those that have seen widespread outbreaks and were forced to impose stricter restrictions. So as a rough rule of thumb, those economies that were forced to impose harsh restrictions saw twice as large in terms of contraction in economic activity compared to those that moved early and managed to contain things. And in terms of the economic rebound, those countries that were successful early on have seen a much quicker recovery and much closer to normalization. It's still below where it was pre-pandemic, around 10%, but for the other economies that are still grappling with it, the level of activity is still a good 20 or even close to 30% below where it was pre-pandemic. So containing the virus, again, is a very important feature of how quickly an economy can recover. And as I mentioned earlier, no matter how good a government is, this virus can suddenly reappear. And this is where, crucially, the vaccine is the only way a global economy can get to any semblance of normality. So everything pretty much hinges on the vaccine breakthrough. In the past month or so, we have had some positive news of breakthroughs in terms of 3 particular vaccines in particular, Pfizer, Moderna, and Oxford AstraZeneca. There's been some issues about the trials for Oxford AstraZeneca, but at least Pfizer and Moderna, those two are probably at the forefront. Now, the vaccine hasn't been approved yet. No vaccine has been approved, but I anticipate at least one of them, if not 2, should get approved before Christmas. And then we should start to get into mass production, mass distribution of the vaccine. And that's positive news. But in terms of thinking about the timelines. Don't forget, in order to get fully on top of the virus, the vaccination needs to be distributed globally. As we've seen with this virus, and if you want borders to open and international travel to restart again, you can't just have select group of countries receiving the vaccine and immunizing themselves if the rest of the world isn't doing the same. You pretty much need coordination across the whole world. This is going to take time. Logistically, to mass produce enough vaccines, to get it distributed, and particularly for large developing countries like India or Indonesia in particular, the logistical challenge is definitely not easy. So I think to me, it's probably going to be middle of next year before we can anticipate, mass distribution on a wider scale in order to have a material bearing on, really getting on top of the virus. Which is why I said earlier, the next few months is still crucial for a lot of businesses, where solvency risks still remain very much a key risk for local economies. Now, while waiting for the vaccine, at least there are some positive signs that economic activity in this region can still continue to recover. One of the key important drivers for growth in this region is China. China was the first to get impacted by the virus. They were also the first to emerge out of it. And Chinese economic activity is now powering and going from strength to strength. China has pretty much managed the virus internally very well, and activity domestically is almost normalizing. And a lot of the indicators are telling us that China is set for a massive rebound. It's already rebounding, and it looks like it's picking up pace. That's very, very crucial for the rest of Asia, because Asia is still very reliant on China. And if China is doing well, that is going to rub off on the rest of the region. And even the Chinese labor market is making a sharp rebound, where firms are now reporting more demand for labor. So companies are back to hiring because activity is getting back to normal in China. And with more hiring, Chinese consumers will start to spend more. That will drive the next leg of the economic recovery in China. And again, that's going to spill over into the rest of the region. In terms of how the rest of the region is looking, the recovery and the pattern is actually quite mixed. You have some countries like Taiwan, for example, that have rebounded and are almost back to pre-pandemic trends very quickly. And Vietnam is also another economy that has managed to avoid negative growth. And thanks to their strong export performance and attraction of FDI, they are set to rebound very strongly. But you have other economies like Thailand, for example, also due to domestic factors with the political protests, and also Thailand's reliance on international tourism, which has basically gone to zero. Thailand's economy is a lot slower to rebound. And India, of course, where cases have been out of control, they have suffered a very, very deep contraction. But at least now they are on the mend. So the recovery pace has been actually very uneven so far in the region. And I anticipate that pace of recovery as we get into 2021 to also remain very uneven. But at least it's going in the right direction. I think that's the important message. The worst is over. The prospects are improving, especially as we expect the vaccine, once it gets more widely distributed from the middle of next year, that should actually start to unleash more pent-up demand, and the sectors that are most beaten down, particularly those that are heavily reliant on international travel, etc., they should start to make a recovery, but they will be the last. If you like, they are the last cab of the rank in terms of the recovery, which probably we should anticipate until late 2021. Now, the one key feature in terms of the recovery as well is how consumers and businesses behave and how they respond to the vaccine. Now, in Asia, I'm very confident that the take-up of the vaccine will be very, very high, simply because in Asia, the culture, etc., is one where they tend to listen more to the government, and I think the vaccine will probably end up being compulsory. Whereas in Western countries, and particularly we've seen in the United States, where there's so much polarization just around wearing a mask, you can imagine there'll be huge anti-vaccine vaxxers around which probably just refuse to take the vaccine. So that might hamper maybe the progress, but I think in Asia, I have full confidence we're going to get as close to full vaccination once it really gets going. That will really help to kickstart at least travel within the region, first and foremost, before it starts to extend. But again, we need to see how consumers behave, how confident they are of the vaccine, and how effective it is. Because if consumers have full confidence in that, and then they are fully embraced and get back to business as usual, then that's going to turbocharge the recovery probably in late 2021 and over the course of 2022. But certainly that's the outlook is definitely brighter. But again, how businesses, households behave, I think is still a critical part of that, which is still uncertain. And of course, not having to worry about Trump for another 4 years, I think is just going to help in terms of sentiment in the region, and anticipate, at least with Biden coming on from the 20th of January, there should be better coordination and hopefully more cooperation globally in terms of the distribution of the vaccine. We'll probably see less tensions around trade, particularly with US and China. Again, that's going to be positive for the region because the last couple of years with the trade war, that also had a huge dent on activity in the region. And finally, just to show that we are pretty much getting back on track, the recent signing of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, I think is very important for the medium to longer term outlook, particularly for ASEAN. This is the biggest free trade agreement that has been signed. At the forefront of it, we have China, and this is the first multilateral trade agreement that China has signed. The opportunities it offers for ASEAN is quite huge because part of this agreement includes China, Japan, and Korea. These are the three countries that increasingly are starting to invest more and shift their manufacturing production offshore. Japan and Korea has already been doing that for many years. You know, Japan was the first for many of their companies to shift production to ASEAN. Korea in the last 10 years have started to do that, particularly in Vietnam. And China more recently has started to do that. And with this agreement, that's just going to make ASEAN a very, very attractive destination to see those supply chain shifts really accelerate. So that I think offers, you know, quite a very exciting opportunities for countries like Vietnam, also for countries like Indonesia, Thailand as well, and Malaysia to attract more of those production shifts that will then turbocharge and see an improvement in their economic activity over the medium term. So that's it from me. Thank you very much. Happy, and I think we're moving on to the Q&A session now.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Goh. That was very informative and some great insights there. Obviously, it has been a turbulent year, 2020. So a couple of questions that have come through, one of them being, how do you see on a currency basis with China's acceleration of growth and hiring, etc., how do you see the RMB versus the US dollar trending for the next, say, 6 months into 2021? What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I'm actually very bullish on the Chinese currency. I expect it to appreciate towards 630 by end of next year. My fair value for the renminbi is actually closer to 6. So the currency is actually still undervalued in my view. And you got to remember the renminbi is coming from an undervalued position because of the trade war. The tariffs in the US was what caused the renminbi to weaken past 7 last year. And of course, when the virus first started to spread, it started from China. So that caused the renminbi to stay weak. But since then, the renminbi has been strengthening as it has removed some of that early negativity. But now with the growing momentum, and my expectation is that the dollar will continue to weaken, that's going to be a huge, powerful force for the renminbi to continue to appreciate in 2021.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting mix for Southeast Asia coming in with purchases being varied between the different currencies. Okay, and then we have another interesting question. In your opinion, the what would be the top three countries to watch in terms of growth rate for 2021? The ones that have kind of performed the best in this lockdown and this pandemic. In your opinion, what are those top three?
I guess from a headline grabbing point of view, Philippines will probably end up being recording a very, very strong growth rebound in 2021, but only because they will suffer a very sharp contraction this year because of the lockdown around Metro Manila and also the fall off in overseas remittances from OFWs. So part of the natural rebound is just low base effects. India, I think, will also record headline grabbing strong numbers simply because of the contraction in 2020. But if I look at which economies I think structurally will really power ahead, Vietnam, I think, has been doing very well. They have contained the virus, pretty well. They're one of the few economies to manage positive growth in 2020, and I think you'll see their growth rate pick back up to normal next year. So I think Vietnam will do super well. And of course, China, where we could well end up back to 7% type growth rates for 2021.
Perfect. Very interesting. Well, Mr. Goh, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Donald, just one more question. Forgive me.
There we are.
Yes, we have Q&A. I'm just wondered whether you have any insights on the Australian-Chinese tension. I know it's not specific, but obviously your employer and my employer is Australian-centric. And just what are you guys talking about right now? How do you see things?
Look, I think in the near term, we can expect tensions and the relationship to just continue to get very testy. And we'll probably see more actions on the Chinese side against specific Australian products. We already seen recently, as you're aware, with wine and there was barley and other products early on. I think the key will be how a Biden administration, when he eventually comes in on the 20th of January, and how he deals with China. I think if US and Beijing relations can take a tone better, that might also help China-Australian relations somewhat as well, I'm hoping, because I think part of the tensions within Australia and China is also because of the way Trump has dealt with China in the last 4 years as well, super confrontational. So I think if US and China relations can cool off a little bit, that might hopefully also rub off on China-Australian relations. But I think near term, until we get Biden in the White House, expect things to remain testy, I think is all I can say.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Excellent. Well, Mr. Goh, thank you again. We are moving on with a presentation from Mr. Jowett, Mr. Roger Jowett, our Group CEO, coming to us from Sydney, Australia. I'm sure many of you have met him face to face. He's not afraid to get out into the region and do some customer visits, and that really brings a great presence. So, Roger, thanks for joining us here, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Video first? Straight into the presentation. Okay. Well, no karaoke this year, which is a blessing. But thanks very much, Donald, for inviting me today in this new format. So yeah, I haven't got a huge amount to run through, but let's just flag up one slide and I'll talk to this for you. I'll just start on the top left. Hopefully everybody can see the business initiatives that our organization is undertaking. I'll just start with the brand change. Obviously, you can all see the Motion brand alive and kicking and everything to do with this conference. We're now owned fully by the US corporation Genuine Parts Company. Their industrial business brand in North America, which includes Canada and Mexico, it's a $6 billion US business. It's called Motion Industries. And for us, it was a fairly easy decision to make use of this umbrella brand and to let go of our Inenco brand. The Inenco brand was fairly young, maybe 5, 6 years old. It was not used as a sales tool in any of the markets in which we operate. And for us, it was turning the page from family ownership into a GPC world, which is obviously corporate North American ownership. But you will see us increasingly using this brand. Our mothership has aspirations to become a global operator. And so it makes sense for us to use this brand. And you will see us using it in each region to various extents. Well, one of the things we're doing in Australia is we're pulling together our different businesses. So we have a traditional bearings and power transmission branch network, which actually has 2 brands. Then we have a hydraulics business, we have a fasteners business and a seals business, and we have some workshops. And when we co-locate businesses under one property lease, we'll start to create what's called motion industrial centers. So what we're trying to do is share our customers between the different operating units. It's a lot easier to do more business with an existing customer than to aggressively go and win a new one. So that top left-hand part of the slide is an important step forward for us. I'll just move to the top right. We've made some organization changes in our group, and I've appointed one person to lead Australia. He comes to us, Ross Witherspoon, you can see him circled there. Importantly, for many of us, he comes from Metso. Metso is probably the world's leading quarrying and mining asset design and manufacturers. Big crushers is what they're primarily known for. So Ross had led the Australian and New Zealand Metso organization for over 10 years. He's an engineer. He knows, for example, Freeport, one of our major customers in Indonesia. He knows them well. So he fully understands the large customer base, and he understands how Metso operated. Again, a global business, not quite sure how many countries they're active in, certainly significant presence in India, for example, and pretty much selling around the world. So he brings a wealth of experience, and he will help us play, I think, on the differentiated value proposition, which is what has helped to grow our businesses. We're not competing on price wherever we play. We like to be able to consult and advise clients and to make recommendations and not just sell a box on a price. So Ross sort of ticks all of those boxes. So he'll work closely with me. What that does allow me to do is to spend a little bit more time with the other operations, with New Zealand, with Indonesia, and with Singapore. So we do have aspirations to keep growing in these other areas. I'll just move to the bottom left. We've had a massive year here in Australia rolling out a new ERP. We've moved from an old AS400 system in just over half of our Australian businesses to the North American motion system called ECOS. It is homegrown in North America, but it's supported with about 140 people in their IT department. So they kind of have a business within a business. And for us, it makes great sense to use the same operating system as our North American big brother. They have a very sophisticated front end, B2B and B2C, mi.com interface. So giving customers the ability to buy product from us in different ways is critical. This is called omni-channel strategy. We need branches, we need salespeople, but we also need accounts to be able to click and collect, click and receive delivery, etc. So, you know, this is heavy lifting in the IT world, and it's very important for us to leverage the ECOS system and then to use the mi.com system on top of that. We are stopping our IT journey with 2 operating systems. We have Pronto in the businesses that we're talking with today in Indonesia and Singapore, very happy. And we use Pronto in a number of businesses across Australia, and it will also go into part of New Zealand. Oftentimes where we have a labor content, where we are building a hose assembly, where we are repairing something in a workshop, Pronto is a very good tool for that kind of business, where it's not what we call pure play distribution. So IT for us as a group is a massive piece of work. We're turning over around about $600 million this year, and we're spending, you know, close to $10 million every year on IT investment. So that gives you an indication, you know, that's about 1.5% of our revenues. It's kind of a minimum level of spend in a fairly tough business world, either to keep things updated and keep upgrading, or to introduce new operating systems. So I'm very happy with Pronto. I think it works well for Donald and his team, and for Satria and his team in Indonesia, and there's not going to be any changes there. I'll just finish off with the bottom right. So we have been fairly acquisitive in recent years. We would probably do 2 or 3 acquisitions each year for the past certainly 3 years. This year has been a sort of timeout year. It's been very difficult to get deals over the line, both because of buyer caution. If we see revenues declining, we kind of need to see them recovering before we would be brave enough to try and complete a transaction. But also from a sell side, if somebody is selling their business, they don't want to sell it necessarily on a downward trend. They want to be getting, you know, the right price for their business as their business is performing well. We have a very healthy pipeline, and this pipeline does include a number of opportunities across the region. So we continue to invest time in working out what the right next moves might be for us. You'll see the words here, fluid power. We've been very successful in expanding our hydraulic offerings. We do cylinder repair. We do drives in terms of the mining type operations. So there's a lot of opportunity for us to continue to seek out those kinds of businesses. The last point there, probably a little bit of a strange word for you, but we've just recently worked through appointing what we call a young professionals board. So I have a senior leadership team. The leadership team probably ranges from, you know, 45-year-olds up to 60-year-olds. A lot of them have grey hair, myself included, and we're kind of conditioned to drive and lead our businesses in a certain way. And so we've been taking a good look at ourselves through the 2020 year, which has obviously been a very different year, much more thinking time rather than traveling around everywhere, and took the, I think, fairly brave call to introduce a young professionals board. So we have got 6 people who will form we're calling it the MI Circle. They will work together just for 1 day a month, and they will be advising the true leadership team on how they see our organization developing and the things that we probably should be working on from the perspective of a 25, 6, 7-year-old. They're pretty much all been in business a few years, so not rookies, could be their 2nd or 3rd job, got a bit of experience, and they can understand to a degree how businesses are operating, but they're very perceptive around what's important for them as the next generation, and the gaps that they see in what we're working on. We've been again hard on ourselves here. We've only chosen 2 of our own people. We've invited 2 people from the GPC Australia, New Zealand business, and one of them is a digital person, the other is a merchandising person, and then we have 2 external people, one from 3M and one from Deloitte. We have 2 young ladies and 4 gentlemen. We interviewed about 20 people to get down to these 6. And as I mentioned to my board in North America, it's very refreshing to invest several hours talking with, you know, 20 extremely skilled and fairly experienced young people who are full of energy and very excited about the opportunity to work with us. So I just share that with you because I think it will just give you an insight into, you know, we are a fairly large organization, but we're, I think, sensitive to the need to keep reinventing ourselves and to keep working out better ways of doing things so that we can keep growing. So that's kind of an overview of things that have been happening, more recent events, and things that we're looking to do going forward. I'll stop there, Donald, and obviously take any questions.
Fantastic, Roger. That's great. Thank you for sharing. And we've got an interesting question that's come through, which is, out of this really tricky period of 2020, what would you say is the most important thing that you've learned out of this, and the most important thing you've learned about managing this type of crisis?
Oh boy. Well, I mean, I remember, people often ask me, what do I worry about? And I remember last year, so pre-COVID, I would always say, I worry a little bit about Australians' resilience should there be a recession, because Australian economy, as I think you all know, had a record 28 years of economic growth, unprecedented. And that in itself can breed a little bit of complacency or laziness. So a year ago, I was worried about resilience, because one day a recession will happen, whether it's in my lifetime or whatever. So I was worried about that. I've been very pleasantly surprised, well, not surprised, I mean, incredibly proud of the resilience of our people right the way across the organization. I think that speed is everything. Kuhn there referenced that the economies that have done well are the ones that took really strong action in March when things were happening. And I'm very pleased with our speed of action, painful action in many regards, but the key takeaway is the importance of communication. And we're sat here today using technology and communicating in a very different way. And I think that the communication work that has been done by Hassan and others in the team has just been incredible. And it's the content, but the way that it is delivered and understood is everything. So you cannot over communicate, and when you are communicating, just the criticality of transparency, you can't bullshit people, and we didn't always know what was going to happen next, but we promised them that we would work hard on making the right next move or the right next decision. So yeah, that's been probably the biggest lesson. And people are very receptive to change. I can remember talking to everybody about how important cash was. And I do not expect branch staff to truly understand cash flow in all its glory, but in uncertain periods, absolutely fundamental to get paid on time, and to hang on to your cash and to make some cost savings, because it's the blood in the system. And I think our organization now has a much, much better understanding of cash and the criticality of it in any business. Anybody here listening today, if you've got bills to pay and your customers aren't paying you, you can be in trouble very, very quickly. So the criticality of cash management is a really good discipline for anybody involved in any aspect of business. And I'm very proud of all of our employees in how they've, I think, understood that to the adequate level. Yeah.
Perfect, Roger. Yeah, that's great insight. The cash flow is something, as Kuhn mentioned in his presentation, coming up into 2021, liquidity of our customers is going to be a challenge, with governments not stepping in as much as they have been over the past
Absolutely. And I take the view that there are still some difficult times ahead. You do not want to be working hard selling to somebody who doesn't pay you. You've got to sniff out who is going to be a good customer to work with, and you negotiate, and then you hold each other accountable for what's delivered and then what's and when monies are paid. So yeah, like many things, you've got to be smart in business.
Absolutely, that business savvy, and 100%. Most of our customers that are with us now and that are on this webinar with us are the most savvy in the market, so that we can definitely rely on them pulling out the best of the economies.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, Roger. Well, that's great. Thank you so much. That's the time we have for you. We're going to be kicking on. I've got a small presentation for us as well, and then we'll close with a short video. So let me just share my screen here, and please just remember, for the participants, we will have this is being recorded, and you will get copies of the slides. All right, so I hope you can all see my screen, and we'll kick off again, some great presentations there and some information from Roger, our Group CEO, Motion Asia Pacific, and you'll notice that's the branding that we have on our slides today. And then again from ANZ, Mr. Go giving us some great detailed information. So I hope it has really sparked your minds and given you a bit of confidence for 2021. It's going to be a bumpy road, but we're here together, and that's the most important thing. So the big theme for us is stronger together, and that has come up as a topic in many of the countries today. So we're not going to get through this alone. We've got to pay attention and be stronger together. So a little quick agenda of what I'm going to cover, a little bit of an update. So we've seen the detailed graphs from ANZ, but just to recap for you, some updates on our website and how that's going to help you. A little tough discussion around product price increases. We have a year-end promotion, and then stay safe, stay healthy. So a quick snapshot, and again, these numbers change day to day. They're unreported cases. So I just wanted to give you a snapshot of how we're sitting here in Southeast Asia, or ASEAN, and some of the countries that are affected with these big numbers. But to put it in context, it really is area by area, how each government is handling it, and money that's coming out and flowing into the economies. So we can't just look at it at face value like this. We really have to understand our customers and really get close to our customers. That's the most important thing. So Koen referenced that there's going to be third wave, fourth wave, until the worldwide vaccine is available and readily available for all people. So we've got to really focus ourselves on strong key customers, those that are going to pay us on time, which is pretty important for all of us, and some of you with the smaller businesses, and of course those that are willing to buy into that whole value proposition. Some things that we've learned through 2020, and we're happy to share around that, is how to use digitalization. It's a big topic. It's what's allowing us to communicate with you today, and using these technologies, social media, video calls, conference calls, as well as into your ERP systems, integration with customers, integration with suppliers. These are important areas that you can use and leverage on to get benefits. Stock on hand, stock management, another very important topic for us. So recently, the most exciting news around the free trade agreement between the countries of Asia and Asia Pacific. This gives all of us a great opportunity to leverage on duty exemptions and movement and free trade around the region. So I really implore you to please look to us, consider your minimum order value and minimum order quantities, so we can really start leveraging off those duty exemptions. And just a really great little idiom that's come through from Sun Tzu, The Art of War, which is, in the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. So it is a bumpy road. We're stronger together, and through this chaos, we're finding opportunities. We're seeing customers that weren't necessarily reaching out before that are, because their supply chain was affected, or they're looking for alternatives, and they're realizing that they can turn to reputable, strong suppliers. So now I'll just quickly move on to our latest update, which will be around our FPT website. So this is particularly focused on FENA distributors and distribution to help you and us improve on our efficiencies. So we've just updated our website. We'll be launching in early January. This will cover basically, you can log on with your own specific logon. You'll be able to check stock availability in Singapore from our warehouse, as well as your pricing specific for you as a distributor will be loaded. You're able to do bulk uploads of orders. You're able to save your shopping list so that you can easily do reordering. You don't have to recreate the orders each time, and this can be spreadsheet based on your bulk uploading. It also will have full account details. The name used here, Darren Butterworth, is our IT guru in Australia that's helped to put this together. So effectively, the great thing about this is then checking your account balance, what is your credit limit, how many days due, etc. You can also set some limits around staff members and what approval process you need for them to place orders. So this is a really useful tool. It's really helpful to streamline efficiencies. You know, at the moment we get a lot of phone calls and emails to check stock. So we're hoping that this will help you as customers to streamline that process. And then of course you'll have your invoice and credit history available there for you to check on a regular basis. And lastly, for the website, particularly around invoicing and easily to reorder. So you can reprint invoices that you might not have a copy of or need a refreshed copy of it. It'll be available off your profile particularly. So this will be the fpt.com.sg website. And not only do we have the resources of catalogs and knowledge, information, engineering information, but this will be the added feature for you to sign in on and really get a nice bespoke experience for you as a distributor. So on to the next topic. As you understand and know, there is a lot of pressure around raw material pricing throughout the world. It has been a challenge with both logistics, steel, rubber, electricity, etc. So some of the key metrics that we always watch, mainland China, effectively iron ore exports out of Australia with the challenges between the two countries of China and Australia. We're not sure how that's going to play out for iron ore and iron ore exports, but we've got to just be mindful of these raw materials make the products that we supply to you and that you supply to your key customers. We've seen a movement on just plain carbon steel. 1045 is already appreciated by 3.6% over in the last 30 days. So these are challenges that we're going to keep facing throughout 2021. Natural rubber for me has been a real shock. Malaysian standard rubber board you can basically see 30% higher than September on average. And this is a large component of V-belts and tire couplings and jaw spider couplings. So it is a pressure for all of us. Ocean freight, again, shortage of containers globally. We're seeing suppliers putting additional premiums over and above the standard market spot rates. And this can be very troublesome, especially when you're trying to move volume around a region like Southeast Asia. If there is a shortage of containers, it affects your lead times to get to customers. And then if there's a premium added on top of the spot market rates, well, then your freight increases dramatically. The RMB has continued to appreciate, and as Koen's opinion, he believes it still has further to go, which again will put some pressure on all of us around that US dollar RMB exchange rate. So we are watching that very closely. So as a result of these pressures, we are going to be implementing a price increase from January 2021, and you will receive notification on the details around how that's going to be structured directly after this event. And if you've got any further questions, please feel free to reach out to me or my team, and we'll be happy to discuss. So after tough topic like price changes and price increases, we're offering a great year-end promo. And this is, I love the Christmas theme. We're fast approaching the end of 2020. So we're going to be offering an additional 10% with a minimum order of 5,000 Singapore dollars. And this is focused really around whatever stock that we have on our shelf in Singapore on a first come, first serve basis. You're welcome to redeem this 10% off. So we look forward to your fast orders during the next few days to secure some inventory. And that's going to be a great opportunity for you to leverage on that stock that we have on the shelf here, get it into your country, into your warehouse to support your customers as we see that improvement and growth through 2021 in the first quarter. So any questions, again, please just shoot me a message on email or phone call, available anytime. And lastly, just to close off, remember, a very big part of our business is health and safety. And so stay safe, stay healthy. Very important topics for all of us is, wash your hands frequently, wear a mask, no matter what. I know many governments are mandating it. You've got to do it. If you're going to be blowing your nose or needing to cough or anything, remember to cover your face. And if you're feeling unwell, go and see a doctor. There's no harm in that. At least you can get treated quickly for whatever it is. So thank you, everybody. We've got one quick closeout video for you, and I hope you enjoy it. So thank you again for joining us, and we'll keep in touch.